Hey there, I know you're on a journey from grief to growth, just like I am, and you may be looking for tools to help you live a more soul aligned life. Well, head over to my Grief to Growth store. It's your one stop shop for inspiration, for healing, and for transformation. Inside there, you're going to find some free resources to help you get started. You'll find guided meditations to calm your mind and reconnect with your spirit. You'll find signed copies of my book, Gems of Healing. You'll find my brand new Oracle deck to help you tap into daily divine guidance. And there's some powerful mini courses designed to fit in your busy life and move you forward one gentle step at a time. So whether you're deep in grief, seeking spiritual growth, or just ready for a reset, there's something waiting for you right now. Just go to grieftogrowth.com/store, grief numeral 2 growth.com/store, and start exploring. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, welcome to Grief to Growth. I'm Brian Smith, and if you're new here, I'm glad you found us. This show exists for the moments when life cracks us open in ways you didn't expect. When someone you love is gone and the world keeps moving, but you can't quite move with it. We talk about grief, loss, consciousness, and the questions that feel too big to say out loud. What happens when we die? Are the people we've lost still with us? And is it possible that love doesn't end, it just changes form? I bring guests who've lived these questions, not just studied them. So if you're new here, again, welcome to Grief to Growth. My guest today is Dawn Baumann Brunke. And Dawn has spent her life listening to animals, to dreams, to the quiet signals that frankly most of us learn to ignore. Dawn is the author of 10 books. She's an animal communicator and a dream enthusiast living in Alaska. Dawn has built her entire body of work around one radical premise, and that's that consciousness is far more expansive than we've been taught to believe, and that real connection doesn't require physical presence. But then that was put to the test. Her husband, Bob, died unexpectedly after 33 years together, and everything she thought she knew was put to the test. What happened next became her most extraordinary book yet. Talks with Bob is a true story of grief, love, and an ongoing conversation that refused to end. Through dreams, inner world encounters, and shared thoughts, Dawn and Bob kept talking, and what Bob shared from the other side offers a glimpse into the afterlife that is tender, surprising, and deeply hopeful. Now, time works differently there. Love keeps expanding, and the divide between here and whatever comes next may be far thinner than we think. And I got to tell you, I read this book, and it really enhanced the way I think about the afterlife in the way of only a handful of books I can think of did. So I wanted to rush to get Dawn on, so that's why she's here with me today. If you've ever lost someone and wondered whether the silence that followed was real, whether the connection you had could possibly survive death, this conversation is for you. Dawn's story might just change what you believe is possible also. If you want to continue this conversation after the episode, head over to grieftogrowth.substack.com. You'll find an article there about today's discussion where you can comment and connect with me and with other listeners. And with that, let's get started with Dawn Brunke.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for that lovely intro.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. I said in the intro, I kind of alluded to the fact that my schedule is booked out. We're recording this in April, and I'm booked out through November. But when I read your book, I was like, I've got to get you on now. There's a handful of books I've read that really impacted me, and this is definitely one of them.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. It didn't start out to be a book. It was just conversations. And and I am an author, so within a couple of weeks, I was thinking maybe that's a book, maybe that would help people. And you didn't ask this, but I'll just tell you that
Yeah.
the format of the book is basically the conversations that I had with Bob day after day after day. So they kind of meander and they're about a lot of different things. And it was a challenge for me because the editor in me likes to organize and summarize,
Hmm.
And this is more of an invitation for readers to come along and just experience what we experienced, which was a gentle unfolding about the afterlife, about relationship, about my process through grief. And you're right, in the very beginning, you said, grief cracks you open. And that is the word. It just cracked me open. And then we're open to a lot of different possibilities of how we choose to move once we're opened like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, before we get into the book and everything,
Mhm.
I always start by ask people, tell me about Bob. Tell me about your loved one.
Oh, well, he was great. I live in Alaska. He was an Alaska guy into
Hmm.
hunting, fishing, that kind of thing. He was very much what you see is what you get. No pretenses, very solid. He had his challenges like we all do.
Hmm.
He thought he was right about most things.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah. And so, a lot of discussions that way. He was just a really good-hearted person. Not, I mean, I would say I'm more a little more intellectual and more into the metaphysics. He wasn't. He
Hmm.
was very supportive of my work with animal communication, and he
Hmm.
experienced it and believed that was true. But he was just very matter of fact. He loved to help people. He was a great neighbor. Always loved to tell a story. The man, you could not shut the man up. He was just a talker.
Yeah.
And most everybody who met him really appreciated his huge, generous heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I got to know him a little bit through the book, and he
Mm.
sounds like a really great guy. And I love the way your relationship actually even evolves as you guys are moving through this 8 week period that the book covers. But so Bob passed away in September 2024, I believe.
Yeah, September 11th, 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell people just really quickly about his passing and when did he start to communicate with you?
Yeah, it was very unexpected. He had been
Hmm.
on my elderly neighbor's roof, just days before, clearing moss off with a with a hose, and he was a healthy guy. He really was. Um, the day before he passed, he worked evenings at an Air Force base to keep wildlife off the runways so that the military flights could come and go. So
Hmm.
he slept during the day. He worked in the evenings. And the day before, he woke up in the afternoon and he told me he had bad heartburn. And, he got up and I got him some Tums and some ginger ale and then he was like, okay, I feel better.
Hmm.
So it wasn't, looking back, I see that as a little, red flag that came up. But he got up, had dinner, went to work. And then the next morning I got a call. And as soon as I got a call, as soon as I heard the phone, I knew. I just knew.
Mm.
And his supervisor told me that he had collapsed and he had gone, and it's as you know, it's a shock. You do
Yeah.
get cracked open, and it is
Yeah.
a shock. And I remember hearing the voice of the supervisor talking to me, and then my own voice is saying, "You're in shock. You're in shock."
Mm.
And shock to me was helpful. It's an anesthetic of sorts. It
Yeah.
allows us to get through a couple of days. And it was within a couple of days that actually it was that first night I was sitting in the living room, just, your thoughts are just all over the place, right? But I felt Bob's presence. I did
Mm.
feel his presence there. And it wasn't a big, deep, profound, magical thing. It was just a knowing, a quiet inner knowing. And a few days later, I had an experience walking around a lake, and it was actually quite beautiful. It was a little lake. My daughter was there. She said, "We have to get out of the house." So we're walking with our dogs, and she's ahead of me. And it's a misty day, very misty day, but a kind of sunny, early September or
Hmm.
mid-September. And I'm coming around the lake through some trees. And when I come out of the trees, I see the lake and I see the sun coming through the clouds in just this very particular way. And it looks like there's champagne bubbles in the air. And I In that moment, I felt Bob here on my right shoulder, and he whispered in my ear, "I'm in your heart."
Hmm.
And it was just this very profound, again, unasked for, just very kind of organic thing that happened. And I called to my daughter, and she came back, and I told her what happened. She goes, "Mom, I felt it too. I
Hmm.
felt
Wow.
it too." So there
Wow.
was this lovely confirmation early on. And from that point on, I would, it was my habit because I love dreams, as you said, a dream enthusiast. So in the early morning, I would often just lay in bed and kind of take in the dream world and transition it to waking life. And I
Hmm.
started hearing Bob or sensing him, let me say it that way. I would sense his presence. And I felt him sharing kind of little dream images with me, almost sensations or visuals of what it was like for him.
Hmm.
And that just evolved into a conversation, back and forth. And I would say within a week or 10 days, I got to the point where, so much was happening there. And because I'm a writer, I'd want to write it down. So I'd get up
Yeah.
and write it down. So we transitioned to a point where I would get up, have my coffee, get out the laptop, and just start typing down our conversation back and forth. And that's
Yeah.
really most of what you're reading in the book is that daily early morning conversation we were having.
Yeah, and there's so many things I love about the book, but one of the things I love a lot is because I think it's 60 or 70% of people who have lost a spouse report some sort of afterlife communication with them.
Mm.
And they either deny it or are they're scared to tell other people about it. And we really need to have these conversations so people realize this is not as uncommon as people think. Now, your level of detail with Bob is unusual, and I wonder how much of that you think is because of your work before as an animal communicator, because you were
Yeah.
communicating with animals and
Yeah.
I guess both living and dead.
Yeah, uh-huh,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so, yeah, I had done that work for about, 20 years, so I had a
okay.
good, foundation of how to do that. It was just very natural for me. I never took a class, anything like that. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that just kind of happened and evolved, um, and it's odd because when he died, I did not think of communicating with him that way. It was more
Right.
him who reached out to me, and,
Yeah.
I also, empathize with people. We doubt. I doubted it. Even after 20 years of doing this work, I was like, am I projecting this? Am I just missing him so much that I'm seeing what I wanna see, hearing what I wanna hear? So we have to reckon with that, or I did anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I have a strong inner skeptic, but so many things happened that confirmed to me, "You're really hearing this. This is really real."
Yeah.
And then it became fascinating, and then I started following my curiosity and asking questions because it's something we all wanna know, right? What happens when we die? It's what happens,
Yeah,
you
we
know?
do. And I
Yeah.
tell you, I have a friend who just lost their significant other a few weeks ago, and I feel so bad for her. And one of the things she posted today, she said, I don't get any signs. And she said, I just want to know that she's okay.
Yeah.
And that's like the number one thing people want to know. It's like,
Yeah.
is my loved one okay?
Yeah.
And I think this book, even though Bob's situation is specific, and we'll talk about some of those things, I think one of the things we can always say is our loved ones are okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grief doesn't follow stages, timelines, or rules. And if you've ever wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's why I created the Grief Check In. It's not a test, there are no right or wrong answers. It's simply a gentle way to understand how grief may be showing up for you right now. In just a few minutes, you'll gain clarity and language for what you're experiencing without judgment, labels, or pressure to move on. If you're wondering where you are in grief, this is a safe place to look. Go to grieftogrowth.com/check-in. That's grief, numeral 2, growth.com/check-in.
I think so. I think without a doubt, they're all okay. Yeah.
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 And so Bob passed from a heart attack, a sudden, a
That
heart
was a
attack.
heart incident, yeah.
It's a heart incident, yeah. So another thing we think is like our loved one, what was it like for them? Did they suffer? And I know you got some pretty good detail about Bob's passing.
Yeah. I was fascinated by it. Like, what happens? What were your experience? And he told me or shared with me visuals and actual feelings of his
Mm,
death numerous times. And it was almost like it was a crystal, right? And he was showing me one facet one time, then another facet, then another, and I think it evolved, his understanding of that as he evolved there.
Hmm.
So yeah, he went kind of into, I mean, the short version is he kind of went into this dark space, not a bad space at all, just a separating space,
Hmm.
where he saw some geometric figures. And then he was in a park-like setting, and his
Hmm.
family was there, and his friends were there, and it was great. And then he thought of us, myself and my daughter, and he wished back in, was looking at his body, that kind of above, and he realized it was too late. It was too far damaged to come back,
Hmm.
And so there was this kind of back and forth, and then a gradual acceptance of being in, the afterlife.
Yeah.
And I think his curiosity kicked in then too, because he had a lot of really interesting experiences.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I think too, for people who are wondering again about their loved ones that have just passed, I think there is a sense, and I've heard this from other near-death experiencers and others, a sense of being home,
Mm-hmm.
and a
Hmm.
sense of comfort and it's something you've always known. Even though on earth we forget, we come here kind of with amnesia, right? And we forget things. And then you open, you expand in your spirit, and there's a sense of comfort there, I think.
Yeah. And I tell you, one of the things the questions that people often have, because I studied near death experiences a lot, I've had a lot of near death experiences on, and people will say, well, this person had a near death experience and they were given a choice and they came back. I
Mhm.
know if my loved one had a choice, they would come back. And I know some people say, no, I didn't choose to come back. I was forced to come back. But
Mm.
Bob's case is really interesting. It sounds like it's like his body was too far damaged. And
Yeah.
there is a limit to what our bodies can take, right? So
Yeah.
if our body is damaged too badly and we're out, we may not have the opportunity to come back.
Yeah. And there was a sense that this was planned, if you will.
Yes.
It was his path and it was his, and later on, there are some discussions in the book about, and in the second book about it being his choice, really
Mm-hmm.
to go in that way at that point in time, and because it had to happen.
Yeah.
I know you had Jonathan Ashford on, and he talks about that a little bit, how some things happen because they need to happen.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah,
from our perspective, from the people left behind, death is always a tragedy. From the
yeah,
perspective of the soul, it's not necessarily a tragedy, and it's a foregone conclusion that we're all going to pass at some point. It's just a matter of when and how.
yeah.
And I tell people it's never enough time. You guys were together for was it 33 years?
33 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's never enough time. I've had so many people say,
Right.
I just wanted more time. It's like, I don't know anybody that said it's enough. My father-in-law passed. They've been together for, I don't know, I'm going to say about 60 years. Yeah,
Mhm.
probably more than 60 years. My mother-in-law was like, it was too soon. I didn't expect him to go.
Yeah.
So I think that's just always going to be the case.
Yeah. 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 You know, and it's what we're used to, and it's what we love. And
Yeah,
so when that's gone, you're forced to really reevaluate everything about your life.
yeah.
It's
So for Bob, he finds himself on the other side, and so it sounds like it's kind of an evolution,
Mhm.
when he got there, and I think there's some things that are unique about our afterlife experience, and some things are kind of kind of universal. And he talks about that. Now he was a big outdoors guy, right? So
Was.
describe the environment he found himself in.
Yeah, well, it was a park-like setting, and he had every year he loved to go on this hunt by himself, a solitary hunt for moose.
Hmm.
And I had just bought him this really nice tent and a titanium lightweight stove, and so anyway, and I was telling my daughter because we're looking at it in the garage. I'm like, your dad is going to be so irritated that he didn't get to go on his hunt, right?
Mm.
And the next morning, in that in between space, he said, "I'm going to go on the hunt." I'm like, "What? How are you going to do that?" And he did proceed to tell me about this in between space, if you will, kind of
Hmm.
between physical life and the afterlife, and it's kind of a melding of that space. And he did go on his hunt, and it wasn't a hunt in the sense that he was going to kill animals. It was a hunt that he was going to deepen in awareness with animals.
Hmm.
It was very unique. He showed me how he was pointing his finger, and if the animal saw him and looked into him, he would have the opportunity to learn about the animal. So it was so interesting, how that in itself, I think, was an evolution and a deepening of what it means to hunt and be hunted. And that theme was consistent for him for about a month because he went on a hunt with his other selves. And at one point, he said to me, "You know what I'm hunting, right?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "I'm hunting myself." I was like, "Yeah, you're hunting your deeper self. You're
Yeah.
looking for that deeper sense of connection between your many age selves, between you and physical, you and spirit." So, yeah, that was also an evolution of the way that he would see the world.
Yeah.
And
And
I think, yeah,
and
go
that
ahead.
introduced a really interesting concept because you talked about his other selves. So he was seeing himself at various ages
Right.
and actually meeting with these beings that
Yeah.
were him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kinda how he did his life review, and again, I will say, I will preface this by saying Bob was very clear numerous times that everybody's afterlife experience is unique. It's
Hmm.
unique to them, to how they understand the world and their personality, and so Bob was very much a, do-it-yourself kinda guy. So
Hmm.
he was gonna do his life review the way he was gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's one way that he did it, was meeting with his other aged selves, especially younger selves that had trauma or that had, misunderstandings in life. And he was kind of able to follow his challenges in life to those earlier selves and to kind of see how they developed and how those challenges affected him
Hmm.
later in life. So yeah, it was a type of self-healing, I might call it. You know.
Yeah, and that's why it was interesting because it's not a life review in terms of like judgment or stuff. And again,
No.
as you said, it's everybody's is probably going to be different. But I thought his was really interesting because it was this kind of an integration of these various selves, and it also introduces some ideas that really just blow my mind, like parallel timelines and alternate lives and stuff like that. So some of that stuff kind of
Yeah.
comes in there too and gets explained at least a little bit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting because he did introduce the idea of, alternate lives or past lives, we might call them, and what was interesting to me, I mean, I thought it was educational, right? "Oh, what was our past life together?" That's how you sort of begin, right?
Hmm.
But when we went into those experiences, Bob was of the opinion that we could talk to our alternate selves in those lives and help them.
Hmm.
And I thought it just deepened the experience for me because we were actually affecting changes. Maybe you'd say it throughout time, throughout different realities, and those selves were affecting us. And
Yeah.
I think that just was a whole, different way of looking at reality and how we perceive the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this earlier. Your process became like you would wake up in the morning. You would have these in between stages also. So you
Mhm.
actually experienced Bob in dreams, I think, in an
Mhm.
in between stage, and then you'd sit down with your laptop, and
Yeah.
you would continue the conversation with them
Yeah.
there.
Right, right. Yeah, I wanted to get it all down because so much of it was kind of wispy and
Yeah.
and and later I was really appreciating because little things that were talked about one day were then picked up in another and kind of carried through. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was a whole connected thread that was divided up by days. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the you mentioned the editor and yourself and the
Mhm.
I guess the temptation to organize it, but I
Yeah.
love the organic flow of it because we get to go on this journey
Yeah.
with you as you and Bob are going on, and we see Bob his involvement in the afterlife and because there were some guides there also, but they seem to kind of step back because it sounds like Bob is like I'm gonna do it myself kind of guy, so they're like we're here if you need us.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely were there, and he refers to them often, and sometimes he would bring in guides, like experts, to do a guest appearance. Um, but I'll say one other thing about that, which was in the beginning, Bob's voice was very much as I knew it on Earth. It was
Hmm.
very, very certain way. And as he evolved, which I really think is an expansion of consciousness, his voice changed. And sometimes he would use words or phrases that would just I would be so surprised because it wasn't like him. And oftentimes he would say things that were outside the way I saw life. And
Hmm.
that was again a little proof, like this is another, this is him in an
Yeah.
expanded state talking to me and sharing information. And we really evolved together, I think. It was incredibly helpful for my own journey. And here's an interesting thing. I think I was helpful for him. And I
Hmm.
think that's something we don't often think about with the
Yeah.
afterlife. We tend to think, oh, that person's, totally expanded. But in my experience with Bob, that's not the case, that there's still evolution on that side and there's still life planning and life, events that affect us in that world. And so it was really helpful. I mean, he said it to me several times. It was really helpful that I was there, both as an anchor in here to help
Hmm.
him remember certain things, but also to help him expand.
Yeah.
It's just he was helping me expand, and that's really the beauty of relationship, isn't it? Of a relationship founded in love, and you just
Yeah.
having that expansion.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, again, one of the things I really loved about the book was again him with all the his younger selves and stuff. So that all those they're all still in us. They still make us
Mm,
up, but also the connection again that they still need it with you in order to further his expansion. And again, you use these various vehicles to communicate. And one image I really loved was the image of the bridge that you talked about.
mhm. Yeah.
So tell people about the bridge.
Yeah, well, it just became a really good symbol of what was happening, and it was the bridge between the physical world and the afterlife.
Hmm.
And we would travel back and forth and kind of meet on that bridge. It was as if our conversations were that way because it's a segue, a meeting between, physicality and spirit. And there, there were a lot of different experiences, but sometimes I found I could only go so far.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he would say, yeah, it's like dreaming, like you go in dreams and then you have to bring them back. So there was a little bit of bustle work involved in kind of opening to that and then
Hmm.
bringing the images back. And there's also the notion that other people had made bridges between the living and the dead, and that this
Hmm.
was a bridge, and that it was very much for everyone, you
Yeah.
know? So you're welcome to come on this bridge because it's a bridge of connection, and it is for everyone. And the more that we do that, as a world, the more openings we give, whether it's film or music or art, there's a lot of those bridges present that help us move between those states. And Bob was always the opinion that we are of spirit. We're in spirit world. We just
Mm.
have forgotten,
Yeah.
so the bridge is something that helps us reconnect not only with loved ones, but with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about earlier about maybe being a little skeptical. Am I making this up or is
Yeah.
this my imagination? And one of the things that really makes me think it's is not your imagination. It's just the concepts in it are so profound and they
Mhm.
resonate so much. And as you said, it's kind of more like a remembering. So
Mhm.
when people read and hear these things, they're like, yeah, that makes sense to me. And that's just the feeling I got when I read the book.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that's true in life. We resonate with certain things and we
Hmm.
know it's true. We don't need it scientifically documented because we know it in our heart. We know it with our being, right? So
Yeah.
when you feel that, and yeah, I think that's why books like this or artworks or even songs a lot of times can help us move into that space, which is more open, more
Yeah.
expansive. Yeah.
And so I don't know if you ever heard of the books called The Team. It was a series of books by a woman named Frances Key, and her mother had passed in the spirit, and her mother channeled these books through her. It's a trilogy, and there's a fourth book also. Your book reminded me so much of that because it's a lot of these same concepts and concepts that to me are kind of like beyond human concepts. Like we can talk to our younger selves and help
Hmm.
heal our past. I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not something I would come up with on my own.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, the whole experience for me was an opening of possibilities. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think when we're in that space, we can take in a lot more, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as you're going through this experience, I have to tell you, I'm going through it with you as I listen to books because I walk every morning. So I was listening to the book, and then get this feeling like, okay, Bob's kind of starting to pull away a little bit and saying this is going to be coming to an end, and
Mhm.
I got kind of sad. How did you feel when that happened?
Yeah. Well, that's talked about more in the second book. And yeah, he was wanting to evolve. And it's like this is my perception of the afterlife from him. There's this entry realm where souls come and they kind of get acquainted. They meet their family, friends. Maybe they still think they're eating and sleeping and things like that. And then it
Hmm.
becomes, more open and more expansive. And you can do different things in the afterlife. Experience different scenes and different things. And then it becomes more formless, right? So those places are. He was of the opinion that when he goes to the formless state, it would be very difficult to communicate. So I think
Hmm.
he kind of stayed in that entry level place.
Hmm.
And yeah, at that point in my life, that was again, the book is the first 8 weeks after he's died. So
Right,
it's
right.
not that long. And that was the highlight of my day is to be able to talk to Bob. I was in this open, heart expanded space. Everything was fine. And then come 10 o'clock after I looked at it and corrected for grammar and punctuation, I'd be like, oh, now I'm in the day. Now I have
Yeah,
this despair. Now I
right.
have this sadness, this loss, this heaviness, right? So, I forgot my train of thought here. What were we talking about?
We were talking about when Bob started saying that, eventually
Oh, that he was gonna
I'm going
leave.
to be
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah. So he wanted to expand, and I understood that, and I didn't want to keep him, even though
Hmm.
I wanted to keep him, I didn't want to keep him. And so there was a sense of him gonna go on this adventure, and that is covered later, and he does go on an adventure, and spoiler alert, he comes back. Yeah. So, and I think that was somewhat because of these books and because of he wanting to help people. And I think that actually the guides, some of his guides there were very encouraging.
Mm.
Not in the beginning, because in the beginning it was just us talking, but it
Right.
became something. The bridge became real. It became more. How to say it. I want to say concrete. It wasn't concrete, but it was metaphorically,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
real
yeah,
for people to travel, and
yeah.
that was an important thing, and that is an important thing for all of us. Yeah.
And so, I work with a lot of people who have lost spouses, and I actually wrote a little short story called "One Day in Heaven" because almost all my clients are like, if I could just spend a day with them, if I could just spend an hour with them, just to see what their life is like, then I'd be okay. And I love that you like, here it is. I had 8 weeks of this, but you're very honest with the fact it's like, okay, I would have this. You're on this high in the morning. You're having these dreams. You're having this in between state. You're having your coffee. And you're writing. But then at 10 o'clock, you close the laptop, and here you are.
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just, yeah. And, but I will say, and especially for listeners who are going through grief, for me, what happened was the universe conspired. All of my animal communication clients went away. I didn't have anything on my schedule.
Hmm.
I'm a very proactive person, so I joined some grief groups. I read the grief books. But more importantly than that, I sat with those emotions. Is I
Hmm.
made that my practice, my
Yeah.
meditation, if you will, to really feel that grief, to feel that loss. And it does. It kind of comes in waves. So, for a while you're fine. You're having lunch with friends and it's good. And then you come home and ooh, and so I would really feel that sadness in my body and just sit with that and then things come up, old thoughts, old losses, old
Hmm.
feelings of being abandoned, all of that comes up. As it's a
Right.
process, right?
Right.
And you're really tapping into it. I mean, for me then it became really helpful to do that because
Hmm.
I knew I was clearing things and I was making light of, and I really moved past my grief relatively quickly. And I think it was because of that. Not only the conversations with Bob, but also because, doing the work, doing the shadow work, if you will. And
Yeah.
and that is so helpful, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
And I think that's a lesson I want people, or for me anyway. We can have these experiences, and everybody, again, most people say, if I just got, one dream or one sign or whatever, then I
Mhm.
wouldn't have to go through all the junk. And it's like, no, we still have to go through the junk.
Yeah. It's an inside job. You still got your stuff to go through. Yeah, each of us, everybody, And Bob had his stuff to go through. He had his ways of looking at life and kind of and he wanted to. He wanted to go back there. And he did tell me, there's some people who come here and they reincarnate right away. They don't want to have to do that, right?
Hmm.
Just like people here, there's a lot of us who we divert, we drink or we eat or we whatever we do to avoid having that conversation with our deeper self. And it's a choice. I don't know that there's a right or wrong. I think it's just a choice of what we want to do. And I was very, I wanted to go into the depths of it and feel
Yeah.
it. And yeah.
Well, and choice is a really good word to talk about here too, because I remember right after my daughter passed, it was around the time that the book Afterlife and Billy Fingers was really
Oh
popular.
yeah, that's a good one.
And a friend of mine, recommended me the book. Said it's the best book. You should read this book. And I read it, and at the end, it's like Billy becomes so enlightened that he just goes away. And I was so mad. I was like, this is not what I want to be reading. Right
Yeah,
after my daughter passed away, because
yeah,
a lot of us feel like we don't want to miss them, right?
yeah.
So there is a choice, and I think there is, at least from my understanding. You tell me if you think this, if it's different from your understanding. It's like we go to this in between place, and we do some of this work and stuff, but then sometimes people will go to the next level, but then they can still come back, but just they're not as attached to the earth as they were before.
Mm-hmm. They come back to the afterlife, you mean, kind of that beginning
Yeah,
stage?
and they
Yeah,
can come back and still communicate with us, is what I mean. Like
yeah,
they're not
yeah.
just gone.
It was really interesting with Bob, and I can really only speak to his experience, was that he did go on this voyage to this other space, this other realm, and came back. And when he left, he was sort of like he would he would talk a little sassy about the guides, like, oh, there are the guides again, and kind
Yeah.
of made fun of them in a little bit of a way, not in a bad way. And he went back, and then when he came back, he's like, I think I'm going to be a guide. I'm like,
No.
what?
Yeah.
Right? And that became his work for a while, is to be a guide, because I think, I don't know, again, I can't speak to the afterlife in terms of my own memory, but I think with some there is an expansion and then a very purposeful coming back. Whereas other
Mhm.
people, like the Billy Finger story, just went and dissipated right into the big beyond. That's a choice. And
Mhm.
like I said, some people come back, reincarnate, if you want to call it that, or go to alternate lives, however you want to see it. There's, again, many possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we want to pigeonhole it and say this is what it's like, but just like life on Earth, we all make different choices. We all do different things. And, as I was, hearing about Bob's afterlife, like this probably would not be mine.
Mhm.
Spending time in a tent, it's not something that would really appeal to me. But I could see it's like, well, this is the way I experienced Earth, so this is like the next phase of that. And when
Right.
people have near death experiences, sometimes people will criticize it. Say, well, is it a forest or is it a beach? Is it a
Mhm.
city or is it whatever? It's like I think it's customized. It's what
I
we
think it
need to
is.
experience, what we want to experience.
Yeah, yeah, the way you want to experience it. Yeah. And some people have dark afterlives, and they do feel unworthy or judged in life, and that becomes a little bit of a scenario to deal with. And Bob showed me a few of those, and I think he helped in a few of those. And yeah, it wasn't his experience, but he was also very much an explorer, so he was really interested in different scenes and how different people did things, and he was still talking. He was always asking people how they died and, you know, what happened, what's their story. And I think that's a common little thread there in that introductory realm of the
Hmm.
afterlife. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was experiencing other spirits of people crossed over, and he experienced your mother, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mom had passed away a number of years ago, and he had always had a close relationship with her. And
Hmm.
yeah, so that was interesting. It kind of put me in touch with her.
Hmm.
And I think when she passed away, I was okay with it. She was kind of in a space where she was ready to go, and that was good. But I realized when he put me in touch with her that I hadn't fully grieved that. And
Mm.
so it was a really good opportunity to talk with her and to, allow that kind of stuff to come up. And yeah, yeah. And yeah, that was lovely.
Yeah. So again, I think I'm not going to say had an advantage, but you had preparation, I guess, by doing this work and being maybe open to more subtle energies
Mhm.
and understanding expanded consciousness. For people that are going through this now, that what would your advice be to them? They're like, because I know I can hear people right now going, "How do I get some of this?
Yeah.
How do I
Yeah.
start to experience this or open my mind to it?" Do you have any suggestions?
I do. It's similar to what I tell people when I do animal communication workshops. It's the first step is let go of trying.
Hmm.
Because that's a big one there, right? Oh, I'm trying so hard. So you want to get to a quiet space, if it's for you in nature, if it's in the evening, laying in your bed, or in the early morning, and just be open. It's really cultivating a space of openness, a space of, I'm ready to receive. I don't have to receive. I don't know how I'm going to receive. I don't know. No, 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 no. Let it go, let it go. And I'm just going to be open. And I would say to begin, speak to your beloved, whatever you want to say,
Hmm.
everything you want to say from your heart. You just start talking. Sometimes that in itself, right, is so helpful. And then when you allow that to come out and you allow there to be an open space, you might not hear right then, but maybe that day a feather comes down. Maybe that day you see a flower in a certain way, or somebody says something to you that your beloved used to say. There are these very subtle signs.
Hmm.
And they come when we're not expecting them, when we're not trying so hard, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. It would be let go, speak from your heart, be open, and welcome what comes.
Yeah, well, that's this one of the first signs you said you got was you were walking around that lake, and it was you were open to the fact that there's just that moment kind of presented itself to you.
It just came. Yeah.
Yeah, so just being open to those things, I find that people it's really funny because people tell me I haven't had any signs, but then we'll continue to talk, and then they'll say, "Well, except for,
Right.
the fact that I see the number 1111 all the time, or this cardinal's been coming and sitting outside my window every day for for a month, or something like that." So the signs are not necessarily huge miraculous things. And Bob talked about like you had some animal communications also, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He showed up. It kinda sounds weird, but he kinda showed up a few times as an animal, and it was
Mm.
an unusual situation, and from doing animal communication work, I can tell you, this does happen a lot, is
Hmm.
that, well, not a lot, but it happens that, those in spirit world will sometimes use an animal to look at us a certain way or to show up at a time when, excuse me, you wouldn't expect them there, or you wouldn't, it would be a space that you wouldn't. And again, we go back to that resonance. There's this inner knowing. You have
Hmm.
this, and it is subtle. You're like, "What's that? Why is that cat looking at me?" Right? Or you look up at birds, and there's a certain movement of the birds. It can be anything, and it. Let me say it this way: it speaks to our heart, not our
Yeah.
mind. You
Yeah.
know. So if you can be open with your heart, that's the sweet spot. Really is.
Yeah, it reminds me. I hadn't thought about this in a while. It was a few months after my daughter Shane had passed away. My daughter Kayla was sitting on our deck, and I was in my office here working. And Kayla, I think she sent me a picture. She sent me a picture of like this butterfly,
Mhm.
and I went out there, and there's this butterfly that it flew around her for like half an hour, just kept circling around, landing on the rail right next to her. It let her touch it, and it was like we both knew that
Yeah.
that was Shayna coming through her. Now,
Yeah.
um, and it's interesting. I think Bobby talked like you can kind of like it's kind of like a mind meld, I guess, with the animal that they if they allow
Mhm.
you to and kind of
Mhm.
influence its behavior.
Mhm. That's what he said from spirit world. It's like I don't know if I would say a mind meld, but it is like that. It's an ability to influence. Bob used the word influence
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
animal, and it's gentle and it's not a possession or anything weird like that. It's just a very gentle. And I think animals are often open to that, because they're more wide open than we are and more in tune with nature. And so there comes a desire to connect with somebody, and sometimes they allow that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's very natural and loving.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it reminds me. There's a woman that I know. Her name is Suzanne Wilson. She's a medium, and she teaches people how to connect in spirit. And one of the things she talks about, she says, you need to understand from your love inside the people. they have to learn how to communicate with the animals and to make that connection. So some people
Mhm.
are better at that than others are,
Yeah.
and I guess
Yeah.
they have to, or I hate when we say they because it's us. When we cross over, we are them, but
Yeah.
we have to learn how to make that connection. Once we're over there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Some people are just more open to that than others, and we all have different areas of expertise and things that we like. And I remember later, Bob was talking about when he was a guide, becoming an animal often. That people, spirits would be there, and they not everybody would know that they had passed, right?
Mm,
And so sometimes being an animal was a gentler way to convey that information, which makes me think that sometimes for us seeing an animal, or having a butterfly circle it's a gentle way, right?
hmm
It's a gentle way of and a safe way of touching us, of reaching us. And so maybe we're a little bit more open to that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that bridge, that,
Yeah.
and again,
It's a bridge.
that part of the book, I've actually used that when I've been talking to clients about that, that bridge that we can build, that we can meet our loved ones halfway. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really beautiful analogy that shows that, we've got to kind of raise our vibration, to use that, if you want to use that term, and they kind of have to kind of to come down to where we can come to a place where we can kind of
Hmm.
meet in the middle.
Hmm.
And so you have some great stories about that. So I want people to understand, as we're having this conversation, there is so much more in the book. So don't feel like, we're even coming close to touching it. It's just really, like I said, really made me think a lot about a lot of things in very different way. But again, I was coming to the end of the book, I was like, oh, I can't believe this. And it's a detailed book, but I was like, I was sad that it was over. And I realized it's been, what, about a year and a half, I guess.
Hmm.
So what's life like for you now?
It's good. It's good. I mean, we're going through a lot of challenges in the world, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, yeah, I still talk to Bob, and he's just very much a loving being and a guide of sorts, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah, there is more. So I just want to let people know there is a second book and possibly a third, but the second book's almost ready to come out,
Mm.
because those conversations do continue. And and it becomes really interesting, about the nature of time and reality and how we evolve. And in the second book, I talk more about my evolution through grief and really coming through that, how a powerful dream helped me move through that and really changed
Mm.
me in a
Mm.
way where I think I have a different foundation now. I have a different appreciation, more depth, more connection to really, the deep love that's really everywhere as soon as we open to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad to hear that there is a second book coming out, because, like I said, the first book really left me wanting more. In terms, I'm also kind of glad to hear you say that you're still communicating with Bob, because again, I think that's a big fear a lot of us have about our loved ones when they pass. It's like, well, what if they move on? What if they leave me? What if they don't, they forget about me? And I think that is one thing. I'll speak for myself. When my daughter passed away, it's like I don't want to live another 30 years. At the time, I was in my mid 50s. I'm like, I want to go see her now, because I don't want her to evolve and become something else.
Yeah.
So we want to be assured that that connection is still there. And another thing, I guess we didn't really talk much about it, so far. It was like you talk about different lives, and even you talk about like a dream that you had, I believe, and you're like, were those people real? Were those characters real? And it's Bob's like, well, yeah, they I guess they kind of are. So let's talk about reincarnation, alternate timelines, and that kind of stuff that's also covered.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, reality. What is it,
Yeah.
right? So in this book, we accept the idea that there are different frameworks of reality. There's
Yeah.
different, ways of seeing that. So in terms of alternate lives, sometimes, like I said before, sometimes he would talk about this past life and we would share this scenario. It would be the story of the life. Okay,
Hmm.
is that life exact, or is that a metaphor of energies that are working? Does it matter? I don't know. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
The point for me that was really most powerful was the ability to connect with those beings, those alternate selves,
Hmm.
and help them. And
Mm.
I remember one a future self who I got to see her life and the way that she dealt, and her husband, who really really loves so much, was living with her in spirit. So
Mm.
on Earth, like in her house as a spirit. And I
Mm.
was like, wow, that's an interesting way, to do it. Like, how do all these different selves deal with this stuff, and
Right.
how do they evolve? So the connection or the conversation that was allowed between that affected me. Maybe it affected her. So it's again, I think it's a deepening of our perception of reality. It's a deepening of our perception and experience of ourself
Hmm.
and of others. Yeah. So it's just again wide open. How open are you?
Yeah, and
Right.
it blows my mind because I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of a literal thinker and stuff. And so when I hear about past lives and parallel timelines and stuff like that, it just kind of again it blows my mind a little bit. But I think probably a better way to think about it might be like parallel lives.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a book years ago. I can't remember the name of the author right now, but she talked about seeing past lives, but she also mentioned seeing future lives. And
Hmm.
people think, well, how could you see a future life? It hasn't happened yet. And
Right.
she's like, well, they're all happening together.
Right.
And so, in that sense, it's like all of our little characters, we can influence the other one. We can influence even a future life. And there may be times in our lives we felt like we got some sort of insight or something. It may be coming from our future self.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think also it helps to think of, I know Bob would always say, everything's really now. It's all really now.
Yeah.
And so I would think of the big now, and then I would think of, okay, but I'm in the little now. I'm in a little now right now. And so we have all these little nows and their parallel selves, alternate selves, however you want to say it.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it's just a construct, right? So if it's all in the now, it's all happening right now. It's a mind blower. We're linear here. That's how we
Yeah.
see time. So you need to be able to step out of that a little bit in order to appreciate kind of the some of the subtleties of time. And I don't know if we can do it with our brain. I don't think we can really expand to that point. Maybe you have to be in spirit to do that, but there's ways. There's ways to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion I've come to. In fact, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and the title of it was on my Bialik's show, and the title was, I think it was, "Are we smart enough to understand the universe?" And so I realized I thought like and like people like him will say, we're basically intelligent chimps, and chimps can't understand advanced algebra. We're these are concepts I think that are beyond the ability of my brain to really understand. I can use analogies, for example. I can travel in my mind to time. I can think about things in the past, and my understanding is when we're in spirit, we can literally be there, right? We
Hmm.
have that thought, and we're
Hmm.
literally there. And
Hmm.
you talked about Bob after he passed and the different perspectives and being in one place and then thinking about you and your daughter and then being there.
And it's instantaneous for him. That's what he would say. It's all in that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also just add, there have been humans who have had transcendent experiences that
Hmm.
have gone beyond, and then sometimes their life's journey, 20, 30 years, is bringing it back and integrating it and sharing with others. So there's that too. I just wouldn't want to limit, how open we can be. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are definitely people that have different levels of understanding as different abilities, even being in the body. I think that's what, like you said,
Yeah.
spirit, that's our natural state. Most of us are so caught up in the physical and so anchored to this point of view, we can't get outside of that. And I think another reason why possibly that you had this experience with Bob that goes beyond what so many people have because of the conditioning, the work that you had done for years before that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to limit anybody to say you can't have this experience,
Right.
but for people that aren't having it, don't think it's because there's something wrong with you. It's like
Right. No.
it's just that's the natural human state.
It is. And the other thing I would want to say about that is go with what you feel. If you're an artist, a sculptor, or a painter, and that's how you can bring your connection in, that's what you want to do, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I just happen to be a word person, so I get words, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a dancer, there's something beautiful about the dance, about movement that brings things up. So we go with where we are and what our passion is and follow that. Yeah, if you're a meditator or you like to snorkel or scuba dive, maybe you find, that in the ocean, right? There's all kinds of ways.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's whatever moves you and it helps you
Yeah.
to make that connection. And again, I think because you're back, and again, even with the afterlife, sometimes people will take some of these things so literal. It reminds me, someone I knew or someone I know, reading the Bible, and it says, okay, well, heaven is streets of gold and rivers of milk and honey, and people go, that doesn't sound appealing to me. So if you read the book and people like, I don't want to go have to live in a tent and go hunting, hunting boots. That doesn't sound like a great afterlife for me. That's Bob's afterlife. That's not
That's
necessarily going
it.
to be your afterlife.
I'm not going to be in the tent either, let me tell you.
But yeah, it actually Bob reminds me a lot of a friend of mine. And I was like, I could see my friend going, "This sounds perfect to me."
Yeah, yeah. It's all what you need. It is what it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that again, the overall lessons that we can take away from it. Again, I think about the fear that people have. Do
Mm,
our loved ones still care about us? Do they
mm,
still know what's going on with us? Are they okay? Are they lonely? I think this book answers all those really deep questions that people have when they lose someone. That first part of it, you're just so fearful. I
yeah,
love the fact that this is going to really help relieve so much for that for people.
good. That's why we're putting it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Help. Yeah.
So we're recording this in April of 2026. When do you think the next book will be out?
Within a few weeks.
Oh,
It's
really?
al
Okay.
it's already written, I'm just formatting it, and it's yeah, a week or 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll the same title, just book 2.
Yeah.
Book 2, Beyond Grief is the
Yeah.
subtitle. So, yeah.
So Don, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to get across today?
I think you did a great job. I think we covered a lot here, and, I think there's no one answer, and that, again, it's about resonance, what works for you, for each individual, and I would say, if there's one message from Bob, it's about trusting love.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
Great.
really what it is.
Great way to end it. So
Yeah.
remind people of your name and the title of the book.
Sure, Dawn Baumann Brunke. The book is called Talks with Bob, a true story of love, death, and life in the afterlife.
Yeah. And I want to just make sure I emphasize this for people that are listening to this. There's so much more in the book that we just barely touched on today. So I highly recommend. That's why I wanted to rush to get you on because I think it's really, really important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don, have a great afternoon.
You too. All right.
Grief doesn't follow stages, timelines, or rules. If you've ever wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's why I created the Grief Check In. It's not a test, there are no right or wrong answers. It's simply a gentle way to understand how grief may be showing up for you right now. In just a few minutes, you'll gain clarity and language for your experience without judgment, labels, or pressure to move on. If you're wondering where you are in grief, this is a safe place to find out. Go to grieftogrowth.com/check-in. That's grief, the numeral 2, growth.com/check-in. Have you ever wished for gentle guidance or a comforting word exactly when you need it most? Well, I've created my Love Lives On Oracle deck just for that purpose. Now, this isn't a deck that's about predictions, it's about connection. Every card has been thoughtfully designed to guide you through life's toughest moments, to illuminate your path, and help to remind you that you're never alone, that your loved ones are always there right beside you. So, whether you're seeking clarity, comfort, or a loving message from beyond, each card is here to speak directly to your soul. And along with the deck comes a downloadable PDF guide that you can use that will give you an affirmation for the day, something to reflect on, and even an activity to do to keep you connected to your loved one. So check out the Love Lives On Oracle deck today. You can get it at stan.store/grief to growth. Stan.store, STAN.store/grief, numeral 2, growth.